joy and success. Every day is a chance for happiness. Yes, we can live a beautiful, crazy plan. Every day is a celebration. Every day is a celebration. Every day is a celebration.
You're listening to The Great Song Adventure with Paul Zollo, my co-host.
And with my co-host, Louise Goffin. Hi, Louise.
Hi, Paul.
Well, we're going to listen to a podcast that we did. It was actually the first one we did. And it's just you and me talking. We thought it would be a fun idea to get together at a Chinese restaurant and talk about songwriting. That's where it started.
Yeah, we went to a place called Hop Lee on Pico, and at first we had these romantic ideas that we would go around with our little portable recording device and get the ambience of the place and be on the scene. And then I remember coming home and listening to dishes crashing and the gurgle of a fish tank and thinking, maybe this isn't the way to go. But it was sure a great conversation. I loved it.
It was fun. I thought it would be a great idea to have that ambient sound. But I've been wrong before. It's very noisy, actually. But it was delicious food, too, so that was fun.
Yeah, and we can do that from time to time. We can be on the road podcasters, right?
Yeah. There's great Chinese restaurants all over, and maybe even other cuisines.
Well, we might be at bus stops or backstage, and, we have to go where music takes us.
That's right.
Well, let's listen to us sitting down at Hop Lee on Pico talking about songwriting.
Hi, Louise.
Hi, Paul.
We're here at Hop Lee's restaurant on Pico.
Hop Lee on Pico.
West Los Angeles. Well, we're both songwriters, and like most songwriters, we like good Chinese food. I mean, it's part of our life, so it seemed like a good place to do it.
I think it's been a really inspiring exploration to look at songs and songwriters.
Good, I'm excited too. I like talking to you about songwriting for many reasons. Number one, that you have a lot of wisdom and real life experience, but you sincerely seem to love it. And as you know, there are a lot of people in this business that have done it for a while. They don't really love it anymore, but you seem to have authentic passion for it. Is that real, or am I wrong?
It's completely real. The thing about songwriting is it's given me everything. What comes out of all the struggle and the toil and the songs that you get out of it, they're really there to accompany you through life. Songs have become companions in a way, and to be able to play them and share them and play them live and do different arrangements, it's really a gift. I always get back what I put into songs.
And that's how I feel about it too. In all these years, there's nothing that gives me more pleasure and joy than writing a song. Even when it's not going good, but especially when it's going good, you're getting something new. And also it does help you make sense out of life. And as we were saying, in modern times right now, it's crazier than ever. I thought when we were growing up in 1968, I said, boy, this is crazy. And then Nixon, you'll never get this crazy again. And look where we are. Songs matter more than, if not as much, maybe more than ever.
Well, it's the one area where it's a living, breathing thing, particularly with people playing live. It's gone back as far as troubadours and gone back even further with generations doing storytelling. And yes, the recordings we make are digitized and streamed, but there's something a little untraceable about just having a good song. It's fluid. I feel that people can always reinvent anything through songs.
It's an ancient thing. Putting words and music together and rhyme, these are really ancient, tools of man. And it gives me hope, and it's heartening to me that even in this day and age, with the digital world we're in and just how technology has shifted so profoundly just in our lifetime, that songs still matter. And they haven't come up with a replacement. Well, yeah, songs were good, but this is better. That a songwriter putting together a great song about now or something that expresses something real to a songwriter, there's still few things as powerful as that. Regardless of how we collect it or preserve it or record it, that's a whole other thing. the songs still have a lot of value.
They do.
Yeah, and that kind of gets us to the whole mission of this show, this podcast, why we're doing it. And one of the things that joined us, wanting to discuss this issue, that we really believe in empowering the songwriter, and that the understanding that songwriters are already empowered by songwriting itself, but that the modern times and the industry tends to often make songwriters feel worthless. If you're not making money, if it's not monetized immediately, they might think this is just a waste of time or a vanity project. So it brings me to the quote I always think of by our mutual friend Dyke Parks, not only a brilliant genius of a songwriter, but really great at talking about this stuff. And he said to me long ago, he said, songwriting is a triumph of the human soul. And that meant so much to me, and I know it means a lot to other people, that regardless of what happens to the song, just writing a song in this day and age means a lot. The world isn't telling you write songs, it's telling you other things, especially now. So for a songwriter to sit down and write a meaningful song and to realize the song you're trying to get to, that's heroic and great. And I know we both agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's a beautiful quote from Van Dyke. It's like he speaks the way he arranges.
Yes.
It's a beautiful thing to be able to, at any given age, create that space. And it is a space that has to be created, because you can't really write a song without making a space for it. If you're busy in your life and you're going here and there and crossing things off a to-do list, you're in your left brain and you're not susceptible to ideas that are right in front of you. But if there's space made for those things, there's information trying to get to us, I feel, all the time. And if we don't write it down and we don't capture it and we don't explore it and we don't listen and we don't set up a dialogue with it, then those things vanish. And they're there. They're there all the time. They're there for everyone, and not just songwriters, but it's important to be able to distill what you're hearing and put it down in a way that captures it.
Absolutely. I so understand that. And you're right, all people have that opportunity, but songwriters are especially receptive to use of language and phrases in our culture and what they mean. And to take a phrase and turn it into a new song, that's really beautiful. Like we said, songs are such an ancient form, but to use them in modern times, like a great example is like the song Rehab that Amy Winehouse wrote with Mark Ronson. Mm-hmm. That's such a modern thing, and it's kind of a crass word, but she used it in a real beautiful, timeless way.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like the greatness of what you can do in a song to make sense out of modern times, but in a timeless, real beautiful way.
Yeah, I mean, just if I was being the devil's advocate and saying, okay, Paul, that's all fine and good. Songwriters are valuable. Songs are valuable. So, where is it going to get us? We're going to write all these songs. A very few number of them will ever be recorded. The ones that are recorded maybe won't come out. The ones that come out probably won't make more than $40. And how am I supposed to make a living? There's probably a lot of people asking that question.
I'm going to drive off Mulholland if you just keep saying this stuff.
I'm just trying to be the worst case.
And this reflects what this show is going to be about, that we're really going to talk about music and being a musician in today's culture in a big way, in those romantic terms that remind songwriters and artists that your art matters, regardless of if it gets monetized. At the same time, we do live in the world. We do have to pay our bills, and we have children, and so there is real life. And how the music, being an artist in a business, how that happens, that's not easy. And as I was telling you earlier, I grew up with this really romantic, naive idea about the music business. That once you're in, and you're just fine from there on in. Which clearly it isn't. So, and clearly nowadays it's maybe more challenging in many ways to make a living as a songwriter than ever. And we're right in the midst of, like great change. This might change, hopefully, profoundly in many different ways really quickly in terms of copyright laws and technology. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a serious question. How do you do this? And especially if you do want to be a songwriter, but you're asking that question and you're not in any way making a living, how do you maintain your songwriting spirit, to keep doing it if your life is not, like affirming that, and that's a challenge a lot of people face, even people that were hit songwriters, but aren't hit songwriters right at the moment, so that's a very real challenge, and one maybe you can explain to me, because I'm not sure the answer to that, but I have some ideas.
Yeah, I remember my father and my mother, when they started out songwriting, they both had jobs, and I mean, they met young and they were going to college, but my father wanted to be a chemist and my mother wanted to be a teacher, and they grew up very, in the working class way where, you had a steady job, and if you were going to do something with your dreams, well, that was a bonus. It was never a promise or expected. And because we've had decades now of this myth, so many movies are made about the struggling band at the beginning that nobody knew, and then they were, quote unquote, discovered, and at this moment they're discovered, suddenly their life opens up and they're on television, and all of that is mythical. It maybe happened that way in the 50s and 60s, but it isn't really about anyone discovering you anymore. It's really not about out there. It's not about other people determining that you're this, that, and the other thing. It's if you do that which is called songwriting, and you are in service of the idea and the song and the feeling, and you stick with it, it's almost like parenting, if you're giving birth to a song. I do think adaptations and mutations from challenge and adversity is really what creates different sounds in music and different trends and things happening. So I don't think it's a bad thing for those things to happen. It's how we adapt to them and the fact of whether we give up or not. If you don't give up, it will change into something else. Yeah,
I agree completely. And that's part of what this is about, too, why you keep going. And I think what you said kind of explains it, and how I've always been, that no matter really what's going on, I just keep writing songs. It's just who I am. It's part of who I am. And I remember at first when I started talking to other songwriters and coaching and teaching songwriting, I would kind of teach them how I saw the world, but I came to realize not everyone is this way, but there are certain people, those of us, it's just a calling. It's beyond anything else. And so much of that was proven when someone like Leonard Cohen or Warren Zevon died, or Bowie. The last thing they wanted to do was make one more album. They weren't doing that for money. They knew they were on their way out, but they were going to do one more album, one more set of songs for the world. That writing songs really was what their life was about. And it was beautiful, even apart from the business. So I certainly feel that, and I think, I'm just going to keep writing songs no matter what. So I think I'm intentionally optimistic that in some ways it can make sense. But at the same time, I'm in this business, and you have to be realistic about what's possible in this business. But I've seen several people who are really great give up for different reasons. And that's part of what the discussion is about, is why not to give up. There's a lot of reasons to give up. But like you said, if you don't give up, if you don't stop, you're unstoppable. There's no one who can stop you except yourself. So if this is truly what you want to do more than anything, it's up to you, no matter what comes. And I think you're right, any adversity, whether it's the business or other life adversity, it just enriches you as an artist. It deepens you. And a lot of the stuff I went through was terrible, but it gave me a lot of insight into human nature, and it just gave me a much wider understanding of what being a human in the world is.
Yeah, that's really beautifully put. And I think that blocks us all.
Yeah.
When we have too limited an idea of how what's supposed to, that whole supposed to thing, is fallible anyway, but how it's supposed to come to us, keeping your spirit happy and open, and keeping that fun spark. Go outside, get some sunshine, have some joy, and all those problems get smaller. And then you pick up a guitar or a ukulele or play the piano, and ideas come.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, because you've interviewed so many heroes of mine, when you're talking to them, are you ever surprised at their humanity? Like, do you expect them to be, we all want to be in situations where you've interviewed so many people who are just like decided that, like Bob Dylan or Tom Petty, where they just were really on a path of completely claiming their artistry in every way, and the world was affirming it. I'm curious if you'd expect someone in that position to be somehow bulletproof to all the same things that songwriters go through.
Yeah. In fact, that's probably the biggest revelation I had doing this work, to realize that they are humans. Because I grew up, Paul Simon or John Lennon, their song is everywhere at once. That's magical. And it's, a song like Across the Universe or Strawberry Fields or Bridge Over Troubled Water. That's magic stuff. There's nothing fake about that. So I was really cognizant early on that is magic. As opposed to magicians who do an illusion, that's the real deal. But it was really amazing to meet the songwriters, whether, like, I met Livingston and Evans, who wrote Silver Bells, and Que Sera Sera, old songs, or Sammy Connor wrote songs for Sinatra, through Dylan, through R.E.M., through, Sia. And to realize, no, they are humans, and they're finite, and they're sitting in the same room I am. And they're not saints. And in some ways, it's been a sad revelation to get to know some of my idols and realize not only aren't they saints, they're not even necessarily good people or many respects. Maybe they're better than they used to, but there's bad behavior in a lot of lives, especially people that have gone through enormous success when they were really young and had no preparation for it. Clearly, that could lead to some bad stuff. So it has kind of blown my mind, but in the same way, it's kind of made me appreciate the achievement even more. Like, even though they're human, they still created, Paul Simon still created Bridge Over Troubled Water, That to me is amazing. I mean, the only person I ever met that did seem like a saint was Pete Seeger. I think he was a saint in some ways, but except for him, it's been kind of amazing. And also really instructive, too, to understand that not one of them could say, okay, I'll tell you, you want to know how to write a great song? Here's the trick. Don't tell anyone, but I'll tell you. Because there is no trick, as you well know. There's no secret. Not one of them can say that. The only thing that everyone can say is, yeah, it's a lot of hard work, and sometimes, it comes and sometimes it doesn't, but it's hard work. And a lot of people over the years, even famous songwriters or just people I meet say, that was really helpful to find out that Richard Thompson or Bruce Hornsby had a struggle too, just like I had to struggle, and Van Dyke Parks said that too. I remember he wrote me a letter. He goes, it was so confirmational to read your interviews. It's almost like being in church and saying amen. That he was kind of saying we're part of this kind of, choir that we're together and we all kind of have that same experience. That we all know how exciting it is when you get something, when you write a great song or you're on your way. And we also know how tough it is when just nothing's coming. But all songwriters kind of share that. So that was really helpful for me to learn that it was really hard work. And I'll admit, I grew up just obsessed with Paul Simon before I was obsessed with Bob Dylan or anyone else. Maybe because he seemed more like someone in my family. I could really relate to him. Whereas Lennon and McCartney, even James Taylor, they just seemed way cooler than anyone in my family. But Paul, I could kind of get a hit on. And he told me many times just how hard songwriting was for him. And that was so important for me to learn because I didn't realize that. I remember when he told me when he was working on Graceland, he started writing songs 2 tracks instead of with his guitar. And as you know, he's pretty good with the guitar thing. And I said, boy, that's a hard way to write a song to a track because at that point, never even occurred to me. And he goes, yeah, but there is no easy way. And then I realized, of course, he's right. And after that, I tried writing to a track, and in fact, it led to a real exultant song, and really a whole different thing than I ever would have thought. So I've learned a lot from that all of them are human. And also, they're artists in an industry, and you might have some insight into that, but being a songwriter, especially being a singer-songwriter, someone who wants to write your song, it's like an existential art. This is my song, and I'm going to perform it for the whole world to hear. That's a pretty, in some ways, an audacious, thing. But that is what songwriters want. You don't write a song just for a small group of people, or even for just now. I mean, really, the hope is to write a song that people will love for decades after you're long gone. Isn't that the ultimate hope?
I never think that when I'm writing. I mean, that would just be too intimidating.
Not while you're writing, but don't you kind of hope that a song will become a standard, or is that just me?
I don't think like that. I mean, and maybe I don't have a song that's a standard because I don't think that way, but I just don't think that way. I'm sure my parents thought that way. Well, at least my father did.
Not your mother? But they certainly wrote some standards, or what are considered standards, modern standards.
You know, it was always about the work. Well, with her, it's always about the work. It's always about, here it is in front of me. She had a lyric given to her, or if she's writing the lyrics before, writing lyrics at the same time. It's always about the work, you know, and I take that work ethic along with me. It's the best it's ever going to get is the act of creating. That's the best it's ever going to get. If something happens, great. That's a whole other train of thought. If you're waiting to get the phone call and to get, that this is happening, it's going to be exciting. It'll be exciting for your life, but the song is still got to be really well put together, and the only time you have the opportunity to do that is when it's a really intimate moment with you and the work, or you and your collaborator. But
yeah,
I never bring those thoughts into.
Well, I agree, and I don't mean to think that to suggest when I'm writing a song, I think this is going to be a standard. Because if you think in those terms, you forget it.
You can do in the middle of writing if something's really good. I've had that moment where I go, this is a hit song.
Yeah, maybe after, like, wow, that one maybe. I don't mean that, but I do mean just in general, you kind of have that hope that your songs will be remembered and will live on. But is that just me being crazy?
No, I don't think it. I think everybody wants to have a legacy of what they. Thank you. A legacy of what they do with their lives in some way.
Yeah.
If you're spending time doing things, it's, you don't want to die with your song unsung.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good song lyric. We could rhyme that with young, climb on every rung. But I totally agree with you in terms of the joy of the writing. I mean, I think that's what it's all about. Never do I mean to suggest you write songs so you can write a standard. I just mean in terms of being a singer-songwriter where you're putting your own work out there, it's a very vulnerable position because it's not like the old-time songwriters who are writing for other singers. You're writing for Sinatra and his personality is coming through your song. It's you. And so if someone criticizes it, that's especially tough because it's yours, heart and soul on the line. So it's a very vulnerable position, but it's a powerful position too. But it takes a certain amount of bravado, a creative bravado, I think, to do it.
It takes a lot of confidence to do it, and I find that the easiest way to get to that place is just do it all the time. When you swim all the time, you just jump in the water and you swim and you don't think about it and you go, yeah, water. Okay, it's cold for a second and then you're swimming. But if you don't do it often, it's like this big ramp up and then it feels weird. At first it's just, oh, I'm playing, I'm singing, I'm putting words together. To get to the point where it's like breathing, it's got to be something that is always, coming and going.
Yeah.
There was something you said earlier that gave me a thought, and I think the baby crying in the background.
That was a real baby. That's not sound effects here.
Yeah, the real baby.
Actual baby here.
It's such a cool restaurant. It has a parking lot, and I love all the tables and the booths.
Nice and excellent food.
Yeah, Hopley.
Yeah, but I agree that the songwriting should be a joyful thing. You don't work music, you play music. It's a joyful thing, and if you turn it into a burden or something that you have to do, you're not going to necessarily get to good work. Maybe some people are that way, but I agree with you. It should be part of your life and part of breathing. And like you said, you have to create a space in your life for it. I know a lot of really talented people that don't do that. They're not capable of doing that, or they don't think they're not honoring the songwriter in them enough to do that. But that is what is required. And if you stop writing for so long, it's almost like being an athlete where you really have to get back in shape. You can't just go right back to it. But if you stay in shape all the time, that makes all the difference. And so really the way I do that in terms of songwriting is I don't try to write a standard by any means. I just keep writing, and often I'll write something just for fun, just to have fun.
Yeah.
And just to keep the, my muscles flexed, just to keep the wheels turning.
That's good.
Yeah. And sometimes I do this, I'll trick myself into writing a song. Like I'll say, Paul, I'm just going to write one just for fun. No one will ever have to hear this one. Write something kind of different that you've never written, just like have fun. And then invariably it'll turn into something good, and then okay, this is a real one. But it's like I trick myself, but I always fall for the trick each time, too. But it's kind of a way of taking yourself off the hook. And in some ways it's easier to do that if you don't have a record contract. As you know, if you get a record contract and you got to write 10 songs by, the next 4 months, that's a hard thing to do.
Well, let me show you this thing. Okay, this is something that I will do. On my phone, I have this app called...
I'm still eating. I know. Louise has stopped eating here, and I just keep eating.
I have this app called iOptagon. Do you remember what an optagon was? It was like a grandma and grandpa plastic organ that had LP-sized discs that you would put into a drive on the left side that you could push buttons on the organ that would play just the drum part or just...
Cool.
Anyway...
Did you have one of those?
I wrote a song on one. Actually, it's on my DreamWorks record. A song called Sleep With Me Instead was written on one of those.
Really?
And I also went through this stage where I was collecting ballroom, just really in thrift stores, like ballroom dance records, and I would be sampling just the strings coming in and going.
Wow.
So anyway, this Optagon thing is so much fun. And my best songwriting always comes from this sense of play and fun.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't always that way, because here's the thing. When you need songs or your work to do something for your life, and I've said this before, I feel like it goes on strike. The muse does not like to have these conditions put on it. Mm-hmm. Like, I need my life to work, or I need more notoriety, or I need money in my bank account.
Yeah.
The muse really is just a kid who says, you're a boring grown-up, and I'm not going to play with you. So I get my best ideas when I'm coming from this place where I'm in the kind of kid mode. So check this out. Is
this an Optagon app you have?
It's just an app.
I want this.
Yeah, you do want this.
That looks so fun.
Check this out.
I've been looking for this online.
I got to turn this on. I don't know if you'll hear it above the sound of the restaurant, but.
Wow. Yeah, those are beautiful music. Isn't that nice? Good stuff.
I'm just hitting buttons, so I'm hitting a G.
Wow.
And then I'm going to pushing D minor. It's kind of like an auto harp.
I need this.
Great. So I'm hitting.
I love that.
It has all these little phrases.
Wow.
So that's the romantic strings one.
What is that app called?
iOptagon.
iOptagon. Potential sponsor, I think.
Yeah. So you're going through there, and here's all the discs, the original disc covers that you would put. Latin Fever, Christmas.
You mean you can put those in that iOptagon?
Well, originally, if you have one, you would get these. They would look like LPs with covers, and you'd pull out this plastic thing and you'd put them in. And so, Mazurka.
Wow.
Whoa. Okay, this is fun. Move In. It's this cool 70s looking cover and afros and rock organ, drum pattern, tambourine. So I'm gonna load this one in. Okay, yeah, it's loaded in. So let's see. It's gonna have. Okay, that's bass, so it's not gonna pick up so well on. So there's these loops, and then you can. I'm just hitting. So right there, you can just hang on a chord, and you could make up a song out of that.
Absolutely.
I mean, my thing is, it should never be hard work. What's hard work is the lyrics, finishing the lyrics, and Well, I have, you know, I can, I can add to the chorus of how hard it is to write lyrics to a track that's already written. I mean, I used to do that a lot, and it's so hard because you're hearing this fully developed thing, and you're trying to come up with the meat of the song, which is the lyrics and the melody, but you're already hearing this highly produced, fully developed thing, and it's so intimidating to write to.
What's called the top line now. A phrase I never heard growing up, a top line, which is what you sing over a track, right?
I love that phrase because there's actually people, and I've met them, who that is their job. They walk into a session with no instruments, they don't need a roadie, they take a pen, they take a spiral notebook or whatever it is, and they're a top liner. Like, how great a job is that?
Yeah.
So,
and even some major artists like Jay-Z, you know, what's his name? No Idea, I believe, who work with him, will send him a track, and then Jay-Z gets on his exercise bike in the morning and works on the top line while he's working out to someone else's
singing it
track.
into his iPhone.
Yeah.
And then emailing it.
Piano or a guitar, or writing a whole lyric first, something like that.
But it is part of, you know, it's part of the vocabulary of what being a songwriter is today. I mean, you know, some people just want to write with a guitar and a pen and do it that way, but it's also a lot of fun to write with tracks. And for me, the thing is not to get off track with it, because I can get really seduced by the technology, and I had lost a lot of time doing these beautiful tracks, and I would just never come up with a song because I was just enamored with the building of the track and producing the track without a song, and then it was almost impossible to write to. But recently, when Dyke Parks arranged 2 songs for me, one of the songs was not a finished song. I had nonsense lyrics. And he did this.
Which one was that? One is Chinatown. That you did
one
with
is
him?
Chinatown, then the other one's called Oh My God.
Oh My God.
And I had the title, but I was just singing gibberish over it. And thank you. And then it came to the point where the string date was, and I still didn't have the lyrics written to it. And I thought, okay, I've gone against everything I've ever told anyone.
You never did that before, where you went in without a finished song?
Yeah, it was like, okay, this is on the list of what not to do. Don't have Dyke Parks arrange a song with a 25-piece orchestra and not have the song written. But I did write the song in the end, and it came out beautiful and really artistic, but that was the most far gone I've ever gotten with not writing the song at the inception, and I'm really a believer in words and lyrics with the music and the songwriting at the inception. There's something that happens that goes beyond rational thought that is better than when you can play it over and over again and keep rewinding it and keep saying, oh, let me try that again, where you overthink it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those songs that you don't overthink, you're writing beyond your own bounds of understanding what you're doing.
Yeah, which is kind of a really interesting and almost crazy thing about songwriting. That you're kind of dealing with the dynamics of your own consciousness and your mind, and if you do overthink it or get too precious in your thoughts, you can get in the way of it happening. And so much affects what comes out. You know, your emotions, what you've been through, you know, as a human that day or that week, affects everything. It affects the music that comes out. A lot of it is so mysterious, but I think what it brings us to, you doing that, is that it's really easy as a songwriter to develop habits and just repeat the same habits. And your challenge is, you want to write a new song, which is the idea, not just to rewrite your old songs, is to come up with new ways, and anything that kind of brings you to a song from a different angle and keeps it fun and interesting and challenging, creates fresh material.
That's true. I agree with you.
And some of it, you have to get beyond your conventional thinking. Like at first I thought writing to a track, it was almost like impossible for me even to conceive. Well, it's finished. How can you write a song to a track? You write the song first. You know, our minds are so set. But the first time I did it, I thought it'll be fun because Simon did Graceland. I'll find a really great instrumental African track. And it was really exultant, upbeat, great music with these fast guitars. And immediately this really sweet but really upbeat song about my son, who was like 6, came out called God Gave Me Something to Keep. And the words were kind of unusual, but really playful and fun, similar to what kind of Simon got to on Graceland. And it showed me, wow, something I thought was impossible. Not only is it not impossible, but it brought me to a whole new place. In the same exact way, I used to have that thought about collaboration. Because when I was growing up, like, Paul Simon didn't necessarily collaborate, though I knew Lennon and McCartney did, but I generally thought that if you didn't have to collaborate, if you could do both, you shouldn't, because if you did, you would forever destroy yourself as someone who could write a song alone. I actually had that belief system.
Explain that to me.
I thought, like, if you're capable of writing words and music, but you suddenly have to go to someone else for one of those, then in some way you'll harm yourself as someone who could do both. I'm not saying it was rational, that was the thought, but as it became pretty evident to me, this is a great way to write songs, and a really wonderful way to get songs on other people's albums too, is to write with artists that want to write songs. And there are a lot of people who are great with one or the other that really need a collaborator. So I learned that not only does it not harm me, it just enriches me and gives me a wider range. It just caused me to write a whole bunch of songs I never would have written alone that are really cool. But it didn't in any way stop me as a solo writer. And in some ways it empowered me because it was so fun to get to write the whole thing myself after that. So that's a long way of saying any of these things that kind of get in your way, try them. You know, any kind of thing that just seems, boy, that would be hard. The whole idea, like I said, is to keep it being fun.
Yeah.
I understand what Laura Nero said. She said songwriting to me is like a serious playground. She says it's a playground. You go there, it's fun. You could swing there and have fun. But it's serious, too, because you go away with something that matters. But it comes out of joy, you know, and I think that's what it's all about.
That's a lot of great food for thought.
Food for thought. Speaking of food, there's more broccoli. It's really good.
I'm good. It was delicious.
I eat more than you do.
That's okay. I had a breakfast before I came in, so it's turned into a lot of food so far. Yeah, that's all really interesting because I think it's all about phases, you know, going through phases of how you're writing. And sometimes it is exciting to come up with a track and go, this is a really fun track, and, you know, what could it say over that?
Yeah.
And I have come up with good things that way. It's just not as fun. It is more of a toil.
To the track?
It's more of a toil.
Yeah. I know, it's hard. People don't realize. Civilians don't understand what that's like.
Civilians.
To put something right into the middle of a record that's already there.
Yeah.
It's a very modern thing. The reason Paul Simon started to do that is because he became convinced that his previous album, Hearts and Bones, had really great songs, but not good production. And it's another thing civilians don't quite understand, that you could write a song, but if you produce it, you know, and put it on an album or make a record of it, you could change it. You know, you could do that in a way that doesn't help the song, but hurts it, you know, and so that's a whole other challenge. So the reason he did it, he figured, well, if you start with a great track, you can't make a bad record out of that, as long as you write a song that is as good as the track.
That's an interesting point.
That's part of doing it that way.
Yeah, and a lot of producer-writers will come up with tracks on the writing tape or the bare bones of one.
Oh, that's more common than...
Yeah, I mean...
than anything. I was just writing a lot about Bruno Mars, who just won all the Grammys. He was nominated for 6 altogether just last week. And, you know, he did almost every song like track first, except when Babyface came in, who was one of his idols. And he said, and we wrote it old school. We sat at a piano. And to him, from that generation, it was so kind of poignant to me and also a little sad that that's old school, you know, like old-fashioned to sit with the piano. But obviously it works, but...
That's how I'm writing the most, and it's interesting.
At piano?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah. At the piano. And when I'm at the piano, it's something that happens there where there's such a deep soul to the piano, you know, there's all these frequencies and harmonics every time you hit chords that are beyond even what you're hearing, you know, they're just sympathetic. And I feel like it's speaking to another part of me, just the physicality of playing the chords, the wood, the hammers, the sound, brings something out that doesn't quite get accessed when I'm in the studio running a bunch of tracks and singing different ideas over that track. Oh, could the melody do this? Could the words do that? something actually comes up. And, you know, it brings up another element of songwriting that I find is really important, particularly with how the world is now, which is so fast. When you're writing a song, it's a series of moments. Even, you know, other art forms too, when you're watching a great film, but everything is really a series of moments that you want to be fully invested in. And I find a lot of newer writers, they're thinking too many thoughts at once and forget. It's really like if you're holding a knife, you have to be in that moment so you don't cut your finger to a certain extent. And I feel that songwriting is similar in that way. You really need to be present to that moment. So, for example, the first line, your opening line, you know, when you say that line, it's not just part of the puzzle of the song, which ultimately it is part of the puzzle of the song, but that opening line is a time and a place and a feeling and the aspect of truth. And to just stay in that moment before you move on to the next moment is really important, and say, do I believe this? Is this true? Does this feel real, you know? And then the next moment's going to be more powerful. But that's what I enjoy about songwriting the most, is it reels me into moments that I might skip over. You know, in my life, that I might just go right by onto the next thing, you know, and watch TV, Netflix, see what some fictional murder mystery, but it really does move it into a deeper level. And then you can take that moment from your writing and what you're going through, and then it's that moment can always be gotten back to through that song. It's the same way if you listen to Kinda Blue, you know, made in 1959, you know, you listen to that record and you're in that moment again.
There's a spirit there that's there. Yeah.
So that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Ricky Lee Jones said that too. When you're writing a song, she said it's a living spirit being born. And if you question it too much or get in the way, you could destroy it. And that's an important way, I think, of looking at it, that it's a spirit being born. That is the hope. And it takes a certain slowing down, which might be harder in modern times now than ever for certain people, because there's so much going on. When I was a kid, there weren't as many distractions. We didn't have TV and phone and everything in my room. It was just the guitar and my records and nothing else. And I love that you play piano too, because I play piano a lot too, even if it doesn't lead to a song. It's so meditative, and it's such a good thing, and it really helps me feel good. I don't meditate. That's kind of my meditation. I mean, guitar too, but to sit in a real piano and hear that from a real piano, I mean, it used to be everyone had those in their houses, and I'm surprised not everyone does anymore, because I have one, and it sure helps my life to have that.
Yeah, I was grateful to get a piano about 10 years ago. I mean, I've always had pianos, but I got a baby grand, and I couldn't afford it. I made payments on it for years and years and years, and I was on the fence. I was like, I don't have room, and it's too expensive, but I couldn't not bring this piano home. And, you know, I can't imagine not having had the piano in my life, because my kids sat at it and learned to play songs on it, and not from someone giving them lessons, but from exploration. And it's
and not
just
from Guitar Hero or something, from a piano.
It's really the best piece of furniture you can have.
I agree. I have an old cabinet grand, which is a tall upright, and it looks great too, as well as sounding great. And
does it have candelabras on it?
No, it doesn't, but it should. It should. It's really old. But I do the same thing. I paid for it for years. I got it when I lived in a little guest house, you know, a tiny thing. It took up most of my space, but I love it. And I think it's great for songwriters, you know, to do both, or to use other instruments. I think especially if you can play guitar and piano, it's really a great way to come to songs in different ways. I've gotten to so many songs and melodies with piano that I never would have gotten to on guitar. or back and forth. Sometimes I'll work on guitar and go into the piano. Kind of gives me a whole other view of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you do that so you go back and forth?
I do.
Yeah?
I've had often the frustrating experience of having a song that I only knew how to play on piano and then go somewhere to play live, and they don't have a piano, and it's only one song I'm playing on, and it's like, am I going to bring a keyboard just to play this one song on a radio station? And I've learned the song on guitar to try to adapt, and then it turned into something completely great in a whole other way, you know? So it's really like languages, you know? Sometimes the beauty of going somewhere where you don't speak the language is that it clears your mind, because so much of how we think is built into language.
Yeah.
And if we get into ruts on a certain instrument where we always go to that change and we always play that shape, it can impede us as songwriters. You know, our musicianship
Absolutely.
can impede us. So
we're listening to The Great Song Adventure. This is a conversation between me and you. And a lot going on there. It's pretty noisy, isn't it?
it's funny, you know, people, they say like going to restaurants where they're really noisy because it feels like something's going on. And we're having this intimate conversation about songs, and we're so excited about the conversation. And there's a lot going on around us, isn't there?
There is. I find listening to it, I'm getting hungry because it's reminding me how yummy it was, actually.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's almost like songs. You know, songs can trigger memories, and the sound of dishes can trigger hunger. But, you know, what I like most about listening to this is really remembering that, you know, you and I first came together to do this podcast because we shared an enthusiasm and passion for the process, which is a little like going to church. I mean, it really isn't a vocation. It isn't something that you just do. It's something that we're compelled to do. And the musicians that we've spoken to, it's almost like, you know, they all have a bug they just can't get over.
Yeah, you're right. It's a higher calling in a lot of ways.
Well, sometimes it's a lower one, you know, it depends.
That too. It is the music business after all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, it has its hardships, but mostly that thing that we were talking about, how sounds and smells and music can bring you back to another time, that's the thing I love. I love that it's time and space travel.
I agree. Every song is like a little time machine. It brings you right back to where it started often. That's a beautiful thing about it. And Chinese food can do that in some ways too. So
yeah. It's and also amazing, you know, I have this song, Chinatown. We didn't really do that on purpose, but let's get back to it.
yeah, it's a great conversation. Let's listen to some more of us.
Ukulele is a great instrument. I've written songs on it, still not knowing what the chords are, but it's only 4 strings.
That's the same. You can use guitar chords.
Yeah,
but it's off a fifth,
but
right?
I'm never thinking that way. I'm just going, this, if my finger's there, does it sound good? Oh no, it sounds good if it's there. And the beauty of that is you're just in the moment saying, this chord sounds good next to that chord, and really all you need are 2 or 3 to write a song.
Yeah. Yeah, some of my piano songs wouldn't work on guitar. They're real piano songs, and they come out differently than a guitar song.
Yeah.
And then guitar songs would be really hard for me to play on piano, especially rock and roll, because I can't play like rock and roll piano. I can play like a lot of guitar players, chordal piano. But I've done it so long, it doesn't just sound like I'm just playing, every beat. I can do some pretty cool stuff. I just love it. I love playing piano. And I spend a lot of time learning hard stuff on piano. Really, like I've spent like months just learning Asia by Steely Dan, that song.
Oh, I bet
There's
the
like
chords.
a different chord for every beat.
I would love to see those chords on the
It's
piano.
mind-blowing, but it's so fun. I love doing that.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing. I love stuff like that. I love songs like that where it doesn't even make sense to me how those chords go together. That excites me because I'm so used to those same patterns. And anytime we can kind of break through those but still be good,
Yeah.
it's great.
I use the phone a lot because sometimes I'll sit at the piano and my hands will just fall on a couple of chords and I'll go, whoa, what are those chords? They're so cool. And I'll have to play them over and over again so I can remember where my hands fell quick enough to get the memo thing out on my phone and turn it on and play it. And then a lot of times I'll have to go back and listen and try to recapture what those chords were.
Yeah.
But that accidental thing can happen as well, and it's important to have a way of remembering it, notating it, or recording it.
I guess super important.
Yeah.
Mose Allison, I interviewed long ago, said, a lot of songwriters said this, which I don't believe, that if it's a good enough idea, you'll remember it. That's not true. I think especially in terms of melody. Sometimes you come up with a melody at a certain moment because of your emotion or something that affected that. You might just be playing the same C chord on the guitar, buddy, and you think, I'll remember that, but you don't. I'm always amazed when I'll do a melody, and within moments, I'm already doing it differently. I'm already normalizing it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's so important for songwriters to capture that.
That's a true thing, the normalization, because sometimes you'll come up with an idea. How many times I've been writing with someone and we had, recording running, and then we go back to it again, and someone will say, wait a minute, you were singing it differently before, and they'll go, I was? How was I singing it before? No, I can't, and then you go, do you have it? And you're always so happy when they go, yeah, I have it right here, and wind back. And
that's part of this, that it's not that calculated. A lot of times you're just discovering things. It's not like it's plotted out and then it goes up a fourth. It's not like that at all.
Yes.
And what leads you to those melodies, sometimes it's hard to figure out, but it's so important to capture them. So often the stuff that I write that's the most interesting is me actively breaking the patterns, doing the chords backwards, And one thing I learned from, since Tom Petty died, I always studied his songs, but I've really learned a bunch of his songs, especially because I've been in a lot of tributes to him. So you learn songs from the inside out. And he was so brilliant, even with just 3 or 4 chords, just that he would reverse the patterns. And he said he got that from Buddy Holly, who basically used 3 chords, but would just use them in every possible way. Instead of 1, 4, 5, it's 5, 1, 4 a lot, where they just kind of invert it. But that in itself is such a different sound. So anytime I do that, and then I want to, what was I playing? I immediately go to the normal thing, and no, it's almost hard to get to that thing because it's so kind of out of your toolbox in some ways. But you kind of have to if you're going to keep writing songs, get to new places.
That's what song in particular can you think of Tom's that does that? Was there one?
There's so many. I'll come back. I don't have a perfect example of that right now. But there's so many when he just uses the chords in a really ingenious way. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, I think, because his songs seem so joyful and natural that they think it's easy. He even said that to me. He said, people think my songs are easy. He says, you try doing it. It isn't easy. A lot of times he'll be in a major key and then the chorus will go to kind of a minor that, how's that related? I don't even see the logic sometimes, but he was just really good with few chords getting to a really interesting place. And he said once, if you're writing a song and you come up with a chord just because you think it's really cool, but it doesn't really seem to fit, don't put it in. If it doesn't seem to fit, don't put it in. I mean, he did have a sense that it's got to sound good, but he was always really, really creative with the use of the chords.
Economy.
Yeah.
It is amazing how sometimes the simplest songs are deceptive. They can sometimes be the hardest to remember because there just might be this one variation that happens somewhere and it flips everything on its head, and you have to remember where that comes. And
yeah. Like his song Southern Accents, the whole thing, I do it in B minor, the whole thing's in a minor key. But then when he gets to the chorus, he's on a minor key, he's on B minor, and suddenly he goes to E major, which is the major of the chorus, kind of out of the key, and then from that to A and back into the key. And he said, when I wrote that bridge, I just hit those chords the very first time. He says, usually, you have to really work hard to find a bridge. And for non-songwriters, the bridge is like the one section of the song that doesn't repeat, where you can kind of go somewhere different musically, but not so weird that you can't get back. You can go anywhere, but you have to get back. And so a good bridge matters. And he said also, if you want to put in a bridge, he goes, if I'm going to do a bridge, it's got to be a really good bridge. So I've just been kind of amazed by how ingenious it is, because it's really simple to be complicated musically, but to keep it simple and still be ingenious and just have it great. I mean, that's the key. Songs shouldn't be so complicated people don't get them. You want people to understand them, but not so simple that they're going to wear out,
Yeah, I could take a page out of that book because I tend to write pretty ornate when I'm on the piano. It's just, I'm staying in each moment, and it feels like, okay, this moment needs to go here, or I'm hearing it needs a lift here, and it's not always something that you can pick up a guitar and play easily. That would be a good assignment. I love assignments, and I love songwriting prompts. It's like, okay, you know, you were saying that something inspired you and you wanted to do something backwards, and sometimes it's fun to say, you know what, I'm going to write something that's 3 chords. You know, I'm only allowed 3 chords.
Absolutely. That's really important. Challenge yourself to do it in a way you've never done it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about songwriting. That sounded like it had other meaning. But like a good example, I would always write, like, to sing to chords. I play chords on my guitar or piano. And someone said, why don't you write the melody first, pure melody, and then figure out the chords and the music. And I thought, gee, what'll happen? And I came up with kind of a real jazzy kind of melody. And then the chords really weren't that strange that I came up with, but they worked. But it was just kind of gave me a whole different way in, which I just never did before, just pure melody. So anytime you have like one way of doing it, it's great just to try another one. A lot of people like will write to a lyric or a title and then music. You do that, try doing music first, or vice versa.
You know, I'm always amazed how it always comes down to the song. Like, you know, we want to make great records of songs, you know, and it is always a travesty if you have a great song and a record doesn't do it justice or doesn't bring the song across. But even if you have a great record, I find that when you play live, that's when you really find out that what people love are the songs.
Yeah.
It's the song, whether you strip it down and you play that same song, whether it's with a band or you play somebody else's song that they love. I mean, people want songs, and they want the ones usually that they have some history with and know and mean something, but sometimes that's not always the case. If it really speaks, even completely naked and, you know, there's nothing around it, it's always down to the melody and the words. And
yeah, I'm with you. Some people consider that old school, but that's where it is. That's the heart of the song. It's words and music. Some people think that the song is the record, but as we know, there can be many, many records of one song. There could be many versions, and that's the greatness of a great song.
yeah.
Another great Van Dyke quote that I love, he said, you know, a song should not fall apart on the street like a cheap watch. In other words, it should be constructed well, and Sammy Kahn said the same thing. It has to have real good architecture. It has to be well constructed so it doesn't fall apart, and lyrically, musically. And Dylan said that too. He says, you know, a lot of people are great at making really great sounding records, but if there's not a real song there, it's just not going to last. And it's true. I think we've seen many times where like a song without a great sounding record has lasted long. The song is still around for various reasons, but records go.
Well, a good example is Hallelujah.
I was just thinking that very one.
Yeah. Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. I mean, that was just another example.
Yeah, his version of it was not a famous recording, and that's a very unusual song in modern times in that it's a very famous song. It's a standard, but it was never really a hit, certainly not for him.
Yeah.
It became a standard because it's a great song. It's just like brilliant music and lyrics. And let's give Leonard credit. I mean, he's a genius with words, but that is a gorgeous melody, the ascending melody. Mm-hmm. You know, people, you know, he had a small vocal range, so people don't often comment about his music. Mm-hmm. When he died, Dylan said immediately, because, you know, no one would be singing Suzanne if it didn't have that melody or Hallelujah, and it's true. So I love that you mentioned that, because that's such a rare example, that a song, just because it's so brilliant, it's been like adopted. And because when he came out with that, and his album, very few people bought that album, no one cared. And Dylan made the statement at the time, he said, you know, that album, those aren't just songs, those are prayers. And I hadn't bought the album, but as soon as I saw that chorus, I thought, well, I want to hear this. And then I heard Hallelujah, and I was like, oh my God. But at the same time, that's a pretty remarkable song in that it's not just about, you know, holiness. You know, there's a lot of sexuality and humanity to that song. You know, there's a lot of being, you know, every aspect of being human. So I agree with you. If you have a song that well constructed, it could it could be recorded by many people. It became a great conversation. Like, so this day, who did the best version of Hallelujah? Is it Jeff Buckley or Katie Lang? And
J.J. Cowell.
that's like what used to happen with old-fashioned songs. Like Livingston and Evans, who I mentioned, when they started, the whole thing was not to have one hit with a song, but to have several versions of the same song on the hit parade at the same time. And they had, I think their song was called Hell's a Poppin'. There's like 4 recordings of it at the same exact time on the hit parade. So we don't think of that nowadays. It's like, Bruno Mars' song is his song alone, no one else. But the song can be done in so many ways. That's the beauty of a great song. And Hallelujah exemplifies that.
Isn't that also the case with What a Wonderful World? Wasn't What a Wonderful World?
Like George David Wise.
Yeah, didn't that song not make a lot of noise when it first was released? And then I think it came out on a movie or something at a later point. It was later used in some capacity that suddenly made it famous.
I didn't know that, but
There's a
the
lot
Louis
of
Armstrong version. That
Yeah.
was, that's pretty great. Huh?
yeah. There are songs that sit around that get picked up and find their time.
Right. And I think the thing that you said, it comes down to great melody and words that no matter what, people really respond to that. It has this ancient response, but it's really visceral and real and powerful. And you can't get beyond that. It used to seem like a while ago when rap started that no one would care about melody anymore, but melody really matters. You hear like Adele sing Hello, I mean, it got to everyone's heart because that's a beautiful melody.
It's beautiful. I was, my kid was watching Breaking Bad the other day, and A Horse with No Name was on one of the episodes, and I go, why is he listening to this song? Usually it's hip-hop, but now there's a song melodically, like there's very little range in that song.
Yeah, you're right.
And Sweet Dreams are made of this. I mean, Sweet Dreams is also melodically, it stays in a couple of notes as well.
Yeah.
Until Annie soars in the backing vocals. And the track is amazing. So occasionally I think those rules are broken. Sometimes it's just a really good chant in the same way that we have chants.
Absolutely. I've thought of that a lot because I tend to think, well, what makes a good melody? And that was another common misconception, that it has to have a big range, like a Burt Bacharach song or Somewhere Over the Rainbow that starts with an octave leap, or Somewhere, from West Side Story, this big giant leaps. And that is really great when someone does that, like a Free Fallin', he has an octave leap. But at the same time, there's so many songs where sometimes, like you said, it's chant where there's very few notes, but it's almost hypnotic and it's great too. And sometimes it's really powerful when a melody stays in one place but the chords shift. Mm-hmm. That's really beautiful too.
Yeah.
So I like to ask people that question, but it's almost unanswerable. Like, what makes a melody great? Because we just know when we love them, but you can't really put it into words. And I asked Dave Brubeck that, and he didn't write Take 5, but he did Take 5. The biggest jazz record ever, and he said, the secret of a great melody is a secret, which is funny, not very informative. But Dyke Parks had a lot of explanation. He said, he says it's like a story. It starts with exposition and development, and it exists in time. But as you know, there's songwriters that really want to look at these things, and others that don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of percussion going on.
I know.
Here.
I was thinking maybe there's some horn parts coming out of the dishes. Yeah, and then with hip hop too, it's not about melody either. I mean, when melody comes into hip hop records, I often enjoy it more, but it doesn't always happen. And sometimes I enjoy it if it doesn't happen. And again, it's about rhythm and attitude.
Yeah.
And
right.
And there's a whole genre of the kind of things to talk about, which is interesting. It's interesting that there's a genre of music where the topic and subject matter are a little bit predetermined. Like when we write any other kind of song, we don't say, well, the song has to be about, but, you can't have a credible hip-hop song, and if the word bitches never appear in it, it's just not quite credible, I mean, there's certain things that have to be in hip-hop records. So
right.
It's pretty wide. And this is the thing about adaptation, too. it's going to keep changing.
Right.
You know, these forms will keep changing, and it will change according to the technology.
Well, I thought it was interesting when hip hop and rap started. There were no sung melodies; it was just rap with some really creative, sounds and tracks. But when they started putting, you have a rap and then you have a great singer, sing a really great melodic chorus. Wow, that's a lot better, isn't it? I mean, people love that, and it kind of helps with the rest of the song. But I just saw Eminem perform, and he had a great chorus sung by a real singer, and I think that really helped. That that they even realized, melody does matter. Not as much melody. And I do think in modern songwriting, sometimes melodies in general are shorter melodies. The ones that become famous are maybe shorter than some old-time melodies, but people still respond to melody, no matter what generation, I think.
Yeah, melody and rhythm, and it's really what it is. I think a lot of those records with beats, they come from sampling, and they come from programming, and I went through a stage of I don't want to listen to records made by computers anymore, because it just doesn't kind of connect with me in the same way when I hear that thing of things slightly being imperfect in the time, like Motown records, the imperfection of things didn't exactly fall, metronomically to the exact nanosecond. And when things are quantized and all of that,
right.
There's something that doesn't speak to the soul as much. However, having said that, there's just so many creative, amazing things being done with using sounds and the speeding up and the slowing down, the things that you can only do on computers. And rather than hide the fact that it's made on a computer, you exalt that fact about it, and it's a whole other genre of sounds, and colors to play with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there are schools of thought that, unless you're using real instruments, it's not real, but great artists can make great music, even with like that octagon. Is that what's called, octagon thing?
It's on the phone, it's called iOptagon, and the original instrument was an octagon.
I mean, Warren Zevon did this whole album, Transverse City, which is all computer music. I love it. It's great. Of course, he still has David Gilmour doing, a real lead solo. That helps. I love that mixture of the two.
Yeah.
Like Eno often would do a real great mixture, like Talking Heads, where there's a mixture of the two, where it's techno with humanity combined, but yes.
I have a song in my attic somewhere on a DAT with Dave Gilmour playing guitar solos over the end.
Not bad. You've worked with some decent people in your time, Louise. Even Zevon, to get Gilmour, he didn't get him in the studio. I think they sent the tape to Abbey Road in England, and he did it. And Gilmour did like 12 tracks and sent it back. But he did show up for a music video they did. Man, his playing was good. He's a good player.
He's a soulful singer, too.
What did he play on of yours?
It was a song called The River. It's a beautiful song, actually.
Wow.
And I recorded it on Astoria, Dave's boat on the Thames, years ago. And I also recut the song.
Dave who?
Dave Gilmour.
Dave Gilmour's boat. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. I didn't know he had a boat.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. It was a boat that Charlie Chaplin owned at one point. It's a very old boat. It's a houseboat, and it had an SSL on one end, and the recording. You'd put the amps on the other end, and rooms like a galley in between.
Cool. I love Chaplin. I'm a Chaplin lover.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of things haven't come out. I mean, a lot of things are sitting on DATs, and I guess I need to do some archiving at some point.
Yeah, so you got a lot of material you've created that hasn't come out.
Yeah.
With some great people, too. With Gilmour, and, if we can hear some of those in future shows, too.
Maybe.
I would like to.
What's interesting is a lot of things I didn't put out because I had this, perfectionism where I didn't make the record quite the way I wanted to make it, and now I'm much more forgiving with myself. I look back and I look at things as charming. I used to not be able to watch any videos that I made when I was a teenager, when I was really rock and throwing the microphone at the at the camera person. But now I look back and I go, oh, it's a lot more self-love rather than self-criticism.
But that's part of it too, that you do want it to get perfect, and perfection is not easy to achieve, if ever. You want to get near it. And Martha Graham said, like, being an artist has this divine dissatisfaction that you can never reach perfection. And that's why a lot of people I know, great people, never want to hear their own albums or watch their own movies. It's just not what they want. It's not good enough. And people don't understand that. Like Tom Petty said, people think if you're a rock star, you always know that you're great, and no one has to tell you that, and it's so not true. That you still are human, and you still don't have that. Like, I'm famous and successful, so everything I do is great. Mm-hmm. You're still an artist, doing music, which is people have a subjective response to. And
yeah, it's the perfectionism thing. It's something that I talk to people about. When we did our master class, perfectionism. Okay, there's two things. There's excellence, striving for excellence, and there's perfectionism. And perfectionism is damaging because there is no perfect. If you look at nature, nature is not perfect. In fact, my son came home the other day talking about a lemon tree that had just been planted that had the most perfect lemons, and it was weird. I said, well, what are they, like genetically modified lemons growing off that tree? He says, it's the weirdest thing. Every lemon is perfect, and I'm scared to eat them. And I have a lemon tree. We have a lemon tree in our backyard, and the lemons they're so diverse. Sometimes there's a big lemon with the rind is an inch thick, and there's hardly any juice, and then there's these smaller lemons that have tons of juice, and there is no perfect lemon in songwriting, and we want, I was taking a culinary class where the way that they serve the food on the plate is to make a half moon on like the left side of the plate. It shouldn't be in the middle of the plate all perfectly, because nature doesn't do things like that. Anyway, I've definitely got on a tangent, but perfectionism, I think, comes from insecurity. It's really, I don't want to expose myself, because if I expose myself and I haven't checked every single angle of this to make sure that there's nothing lacking anywhere, I'm going to feel vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And then what people do is they take all the joy out of it. They overcook it. It loses its thing. And I'm guilty as charged. I did that plenty. But striving for excellence is a different thing. Yeah. And I think part of getting mastery at what you do is learning when to stop.
Yes, that's very important. So I know really talented songwriters who have been making their CD for the last 15 years. They will never finish it because it will never be perfect. But that's what they're striving for, so it's paralyzing them. I mean, they're not able to complete something in the world for that very reason. So you're absolutely right. But at the same time, I find songwriting is one of the few places in my life where I can get it, not perfect, but I can get it where I think it's right. If I finish a song and there's one line that I love the whole song, but one line bothers me, I will keep working until I fix that line.
So how do you know? And to me, that's the thing I was trying to express. Knowing when to stop. It's something you have cultivated over time. Mm-hmm. Well, you're a wordsmith in all that you do, so you have a sense of words. You have a sense of the color of this word isn't quite right, or the sound of this word doesn't quite sing the way I want. It's not quite the right shade, mm-hmm. And you know that. How do people know that who don't know that?
It's hard to say that to someone else. The way I know it, it's almost like the song tells you. I mean, Simon said it's an irritant. He said if there's any irritant in the song, remove that. And the same thing in the record. And I find it's harder to get perfection in the recording than in the writing. But it just comes down to a personal, subjective feeling on the song. If you're happy with it, or if there's any part that bothers you. I mean, it took me a while to get to this. I started writing songs when I was 11, and like any kid, I was just thrilled I wrote a song. I would never consider writing more than 3 verses. I got 3 verses. It's done. I was just thrilled. A new song. But it took me a while to realize, well, it's not really a good one, but it could be good maybe because, and I start to analyze, well, what are the weak parts? You know, that chorus is weak, and part of that's becoming a better craftsman, and part of that's becoming more receptive to what are greatest songs in songs that I love. What is it about certain songs I love? But after doing it for so long, to me, it just comes down to the song tells me. But you said I'm a wordsmith. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. One of my weaknesses is I write too many words. It's easier for me to write like 7 verses than to write a perfect 3-verse song. To write like a perfect song that says everything in 3 verses. And you used the word earlier, distill, which is a good way of looking at it, that you have like a lot and you distill the best. But in some ways you're looking at it, I have a lot and I have to, delete a lot. I have to destroy a lot of this great stuff. And sometimes there's that hard thing. It's like, yeah, that verse doesn't really work, but it's so good. It's so brilliant. Whoever would have come up with that great line, that's kind of your ego. It's like, sometimes it's like you have to be hard with yourself. It's like, yeah, Paul, but it really would be better without that. So it's not always that clear to me, but generally my feeling is the song tells me. And I just have this feeling, God, I love that whole song, but that line just doesn't work. But I'll admit, I'm a real traditional, like old school songwriter, that I really love perfect rhymes and perfect meter, and I like the craft of it. I love perfect rhymes, and I love like real intricate rhyme schemes even. But at the same time, I know it's not necessary. There's like a lot of great songs that don't have that at all. It's just kind of who I am. Even if I work with a poet, like I work with Stephen Kalinich, who gave me some like 3-verse poems, I put them into like rhyme, So I'm kind of old school that way. So what I deem like gets to stay in the song, to me, it's almost when I found the perfect structure. It's almost a puzzle as much as it's an artistic achievement. Like, it all fits. I found the perfect rhyme. So part of it's almost like a game that I'm trying to play with myself. But I think more than anything, I feel like the song just tells me, like, boy, it's all really good except that line or that music or that section. Many times I've written a bridge or another section. I realize that doesn't really help. That just kind of goes off in the wrong direction. So those are hard determinations sometimes to make, but necessary. I mean, how do you do it?
Well,
now that I've talked for an hour on that.
no, it's the same in terms of the song tells me. And I remember lots of moments where after I'd written the song, well, when I lived in London, I'd be riding, the train. I would be having the song through my head, all the lyrics. I'd be reciting lyrics, and I'd go, oh, that's good. I love that. I love the way that turns there. And then it would just be one word I'd come across. And I love that Paul Simon said it's like an irritant. I would just go, no, something isn't quite right there, and you might massage it till you get it, and it does tell you. It really does. You just go through it, and there is this amazing flow to when you have the internal rhymes, and sometimes, more than sometimes, I'll find a meaning in the song that I didn't intend to put in there just because I was paying attention to other things. And I think it's almost cosmic that when you make some things fall into line in a harmony and a balance, that other things will be balanced with it as well without actually trying to make those balance.
Yeah.
An interesting case in point. Do you remember it was going around some years back where a Pink Floyd song was being run to a scene of The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, I thought the whole movie. What did they do?
With the whole movie, and it looked like they were conceived together. It looked impossible that they didn't just go that well. And I asked myself at the time, why does this work? And what I came up with is that there's a certain rhythm. It has to do with our heartbeat and our bodies and a certain rhythm that we feel things as authentic and resonant. And when we're doing music or poetry or lyrics, we're being told that as we're listening and saying, where's the irritant? We're finding the piece that isn't flowing with all that balance. And so if one person's doing it for film and another person's doing it for music, it's still coming from humanity, so it makes sense that they would line up. Yeah. At least it's a good theory.
Yeah, and that one worked really well.
Yeah.
But I had that same experience where you internalize the stuff you're working on, and suddenly you're doing something like washing dishes or picking up my son from school, and suddenly the line comes to me, that often when you want to find that line that you need to replace and your mind is like, okay, mine now. And you put your mind on, it's really the hardest time. But when you're not there, sometimes those just come to you. And I think you kind of sense that there is a better line there. There's a sense on my part that the song is kind of finished. I just have to find it in a sense, but the right song is there. But in some ways, and sometimes I got to get out of my way. Thinking about it too much is not the way. Sometimes the perfect answer is a word I wouldn't have thought of, and so it's cool exactly for the reason that I wouldn't have normally thought of that, and that's why I like it, because it's interesting to me. So I think part of that is when you work on songs as much as we do, you internalize them, and I've had that so many times where I'm like picking up Josh from school, and suddenly it comes to me, there it is. The mind keeps working on it.
Yeah, the mind, when you give things a rest, the mind still is at work. That's true.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day a song came on the radio from the 80s, and it was an example of when there is no rhyme and there is no meter. And it was Martha Davis. It was the Motels,
All right.
Only the Lonely. And the line, makes me feel good, and it makes me feel good now. I mean, that line doesn't rhyme with anything. It's just a conversational statement that's at the end of that phrase. And it was one of the hookiest lines in the song.
Right.
I mean, the chorus is incredibly, sticks to you. But as I was driving around and then singing the song over in my head, that line kept coming out. And I thought, well, there it is. That doesn't rhyme with anything.
Right, right.
It's something, a flourish that she wanted to say at that moment, and it's what she's saying.
Right, and sometimes those are the best lines, the ones that don't rhyme.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the Motels too, because they have a brand new album, and my friend Marty Gerard is in that album, and he's great. So yeah, they got a brand new album, really good songs.
I love Martha Davis.
Yeah, she's great. And Marty Gerard wrote a great music book about Gainesville, where he came from, and Tom Petty and all those guys. So yeah, Motels are still happening. It's
That's
good.
exciting. I'm really happy to hear that.
But there are certain songs that it's the non-rhyme, or it's the clunky thing that really makes it work, or the odd line. And the song "America" by Paul Simon has no rhymes.
That song is just one of my favorite songs
ever. It never
ever.
occurred to me that it didn't have rhymes, but it doesn't. But it works. But to me, that would be really hard to write a song that great without rhymes. Because rhymes, as you know, kind of hang the thing together in a musical way, and meter makes it much easier for the music to work. To do something like that, I mean, that seems
when you
hard.
have
I
a
should try
line,
it, though.
when you have a line like "I've got some real estate here in my bag," I guess you don't really need to rhyme it with anything.
Yeah, and with a melody like that, it's a beautiful melody.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's always the question of, if you write a great song, will it actually rise to the surface, if it doesn't have radio, if it doesn't get in a picture, if it doesn't... that's an interesting question, too, that I often ask myself. I mean, the thing is, songs never die. I mean, all you really need to keep them going is to have them recorded somewhere and a place someone can find it.
Yeah.
And there is this hunger to find greatness, and I'm amazed how culture is so invested in what was successful, because I never was. When I did my tribute record to my dad, my mission wasn't, let me do some of his songs that are really famous. It was actually a mission. Let me find some really under the radar songs of his to do. Mm-hmm. And then later I realized, well, am I shooting myself in the foot with that, I'm always still amazed that our culture is not merit-based. I probably sound really naive saying this, but it really is. It comes down to the numbers. It comes down to how much it's sold, how many people know of it, and popularity. And I'm always amazed with that. It's like if you get up on stage and you play a great song that no one has ever heard before, can they love that, and can they recognize it, whether it was a hit song or not?
Right. That's another part of the challenge of doing this work. You could write the greatest song ever. You could write Bridge Over Troubled Water, but what are you going to do with it now? How are you going to get it into the world? That's a whole other thing. Not everyone writes songs as a performer, too. I mean, if you can perform them yourself, I mean, there are more avenues to get music out without a record contract than ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a whole other.
Well, you don't need a record contract
Now.
now.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. But decades ago, it was really impossible to get your music out in a big way without that. Now, the people you can go on YouTube or so many other ways. So there are more avenues in some ways, but at the same time, there's just so much going on. People, it seems that I have a hard time paying attention to a certain thing. Thank you.
The playing field.
We got fortune cookies.
Yes. And
I think so. Delicious.
Thank you, Mom.
and then
Hey,
as
can we get a box for the broccoli
For
there?
the vegetables?
Yes, please.
For the green, Chinese green. Tocino.
Yes, indeedy. I think this meal is coming.
see, it was actually the waitress, but I predicted that. I said they're going to bring the check to you.
You're right, and they did.
Because
Because I'm the man.
Yeah, because this is the world we live
And
in.
this is America. Men should pay. And if a man can't pay, there's something wrong with him, right?
It's like
Not easy.
I
Let's
was.
see, this is good sitting with you. My fortune says you will have many friends when you need them.
Mine says you are an artistic person. Let your colors show.
Hey, you already knew that, though, didn't you?
It's hard to
That's not
say
news.
an artistic.
And artistic, yeah.
You are an artistic. The R and R thing is a little.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put that in a song quite in that way. You are an R.
Yeah, that's another thing about songs. They have to sing ability.
Well,
There's so
yeah,
many
I talked
things.
about that. I said that you've got to taste the words,
Yeah.
The singability is really like putting something in your mouth. It's like, does it taste good? An irritant. I love that way of saying it.
They're not meant to be read. They're not meant to be on the page. You have to sing them.
Mm-hmm.
And some things on the page look great, but try to sing it. It's not necessarily going to work.
If I'm ever stuck on a lyric, just put it to any Hank Williams melody, and it will show up anything that's flawed in the lyric because it just won't sing. Because
That's a
his
good
melodies are really.
The Hank Williams melody
Yeah.
test. That's good. I'm going to use that. Good. I guess if we got the fortune cookies, that means the show is ending?
I guess so.
Well, I think we covered a wide amount of songwriting topics or music topics.
We did.
It's a good start.
Here's the future. The future is we're going to have more episodes.
Yeah. Good way to go. At other Chinese restaurants, but we can come back here too.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
good.
we'll see how noisy.
Yeah, it was pretty noisy.
We
All
have,
right.
we have babies and everything.
Yeah. Well, that
this
was fun.
This was fun.
Yeah. And we're going to have guests too. That's part of the show. We're going to have guests like people we've been talking about, like Dyke Parks and other people. We'll pester him until he agrees to do it.
Yeah, we'll have lots of guests, and yeah, I'm wondering if we're referencing songs in our podcast, whether we should link to those songs so that people can hear them.
I think that's a great idea. People don't know the greatness of Dyke Parks. It's great songs you should listen to.
Well,
So many.
we referenced a lot of different songs,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's a good idea.
you can see, I mean, our listeners can see how we're really making this up as we go because we're sitting here still discussing how we're going to be doing it.
Yeah. But I think that's a good way. 'Cause
Yeah.
There's so many great songs that a lot of people don't know about. You're talking about people determining what's good by what's popular. And a friend of mine, not a good friend, said, yeah, but if you say that to people in Walmart, will they know it? As if that's the judgment of what's good, what people in Walmart will know. So that's part of how people look at what music is. So I think anytime we can shine light on great songs that maybe aren't as famous as others, I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and support your local artists, really. I mean, that's how artists are staying afloat. I mean, there's been different times. There's been the heyday where records were selling 10 million copies and the record business was really inflated. But now is a rough time for songwriters, and mostly because of streaming and YouTube and Spotify, that there's really not a lot of ways that songwriters are compensated, and people assume that if someone has a CD, they must be famous, but that really isn't the case sometimes.
Really is not.
Really is
It
not.
used to be that way when I was growing up. If you put out an album, there's generally a reason you would have an album. But anyone can make a CD.
Yeah,
So there's a glut of CDs.
yeah.
But I think it comes down to that even though it might be harder than ever to write songs, they still matter as much as ever. And a good song is so important and so great. And also, we both agree it's so much fun to write songs. If you're a songwriter, it's nothing quite much more fun than that. Especially that you do it and you have something at the end that you can hold on to afterwards. Yeah.
It's a blessing. I feel blessed.
It is a blessing. As is a good Chinese restaurant. That's
A
good
good
blessing,
Chinese
too.
restaurant.
Yeah, good.
This was lovely. I had fun.
Me too. Thanks, Louise. Well, let's do it again soon.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you've just listened to an episode of The Great Song Adventure with Paul Zollo and Louise Goffin. That was Paul and Louise at Hopley's Chinese restaurant. If you want to keep in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. That's a good one, too. We'll see you next time, Louise.
See you next time.